North Korea just fired more than 10 ballistic missiles into the sea. And if you're thinking we have seen missile launches before, you are right. But the timing and the situation of this one are what make it dangerous. Because according to South Korea's military, these missiles were launched from an area near Pyongyang at around 1:20 p.m. local time, and they traveled toward waters off North Korea's east coast. This happened right when US and South Korean forces are in the middle of major annual joint military drills. Japan's Coast Guard also reported detecting what could be a ballistic missile, and Japan's public broadcaster NHK said it appeared to have landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command also said it is aware of the launches and is consulting with allies and partners. Based on current assessments, this event does not pose an immediate threat to US personnel, territory, or allies. So tonight I am going to explain exactly what we know, what we do not know, why this launch happened now, and what the next move could look like. Because the most dangerous part of any missile crisis is not the missile itself, it is the misunderstanding. Before we go further, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications when events move fast in East Asia. Headlines often fall behind the reality, and we follow the confirmed details as they come in. And I want you to participate in this discussion. Leave a comment right now. Do you think this launch was mainly a warning to the United States, a warning to South Korea, or a signal to North Korea's own domestic audience? Type A for the US, B for South Korea, or C for the domestic audience. What we know right now is this. First, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff say North Korea fired more than 10 ballistic missiles. Second, the missiles were launched from an area near the capital city, Pyongyang, at about 1:20 p.m. Third, the missiles traveled toward waters off the country's east coast. Fourth, Japan's Coast Guard detected what could be a ballistic missile, and reporting cited by NHK suggests it landed outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. Fifth, the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command says it is aware of the launches, is consulting with partners, and has assessed that there is no immediate threat at this moment. That is the confirmed backbone of the story right now. Now here is what we do not have in this initial confirmed information. We do not yet have a detailed breakdown of which specific missile types were fired. We do not have confirmed ranges for each projectile. We do not have a confirmed map showing where each missile landed, and we do not have confirmation that any missile crossed into restricted zones. Because landing outside Japan's exclusive economic zone does not mean the situation is not dangerous. So when you see people online claiming they already know exactly which missile was used and exactly what it means, slow down. This story is about what is confirmed, what is likely, and what is only speculation. Now we move to the next question. Why did this happen today at this exact moment? This launch comes at the same time that the United States and South Korea are conducting large annual joint military drills. Reuters describes river crossing exercises involving hundreds of US and South Korean troops using equipment such as tanks and armored combat vehicles as part of the annual Freedom Shield training. And there is a reason this detail matters. North Korea has a long pattern, going back decades, of responding to joint US-South Korea exercises with missile tests, launches, or threats. The allied countries say these drills are defensive and focused on readiness. North Korea regularly claims they are rehearsals for an invasion. That narrative has remained consistent for years. And that predictability is exactly why missile launches during military drills can be so dangerous. A radar misreading, a misunderstood trajectory, a false report about where a missile landed, or a decision made within minutes instead of hours. That is how serious crises begin. So the fact that this launch happened during major military exercises is not just symbolic, it is also a test, it is strategic messaging. But there is another layer to the timing that many people missed. According to Reuters, just a few days ago on Thursday, South Korea's Prime Minister Kim Min-sok met President Donald Trump in Washington to discuss ways to reopen dialogue with Pyongyang. Reuters also reports that Trump is eager for an opportunity to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong Un again. Now think about how North Korea might see that moment. On one side there are joint military drills. On the other side there is talk about reopening diplomatic dialogue. From Pyongyang's perspective, this can appear like the same familiar pattern, pressure combined with invitations. And whether that is Washington's intention or not, the result may be North Korea choosing a tactic it has used many times before: missile launches that force the world to pay attention. Now the key question becomes this: is this launch a message or is it a test? The reality is that it can be both. So let us look at what a launch like this can be designed to achieve without going beyond the available evidence. There are four main strategic purposes behind missile launches, and North Korea has used all four in the past. The first purpose is deterrent signaling. This is the most straightforward explanation. North Korea demonstrates that it has weapons capable of flying, that they can be launched quickly, and that they can be used repeatedly. The goal is not necessarily to hit a target today. The goal is to make sure others believe the capability exists. Tomorrow, the second purpose is readiness and training. A barrage involving more than 10 launches can test command and control systems, launch crews, fuel handling systems, transport operations, and timing coordination. The third purpose is political leverage. Missile tests can reshape the diplomatic calendar. Suddenly, every meeting becomes about North Korea. Every official statement must mention North Korea. An issue that may have been moving down the news cycle suddenly returns to the top of global attention. The fourth purpose is domestic messaging. North Korea's leadership places strong importance on internal legitimacy, strength, resistance, and standing up to outside pressure. Large military drills conducted by the US and South Korea can be presented domestically as a threat, and missile launches can be presented internally as a strong response. Now, which of those four is the main driver today? We cannot say with certainty from a single report, but we can use the surrounding context to understand why this is happening right now. And this is where I want to ask you a question that most channels never ask. If you were North Korea, what would you want the world to believe after today? Would you want the world to believe that you can overwhelm defenses with sheer volume? Would you want the world to believe that you can launch from near Pyongyang whenever you want? Would you want the world to believe that military drills bring consequences? Tell me in the comments, what do you think the intended belief is? Now we move to the next layer, what the immediate reactions tell us, reactions and what they actually mean. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command says there is no immediate threat and that it is consulting with allies. That is a carefully controlled message. It is designed to do two things at the same time. First, avoid panic. Second, avoid giving North Korea the satisfaction of looking like it first an emergency situation. Meanwhile, South Korea's military quickly released details about detecting the launches, that signals readiness and transparency, and Japan's detection, along with reports that the missile appeared to land outside the EEZ, is meant to reassure the Japanese public while still documenting what happened. But here is the part many people do not understand. When officials say there is no immediate threat, it does not mean there is no danger. The danger comes next. The real risk is escalation cycles. So the real question becomes what happens after the first volley. Because in this region, missile launches can become a form of conversation. One side conducts military drills, the other side responds with launches. The first side strengthens deterrence, the other side calls it provocation, and the cycle continues until something eventually breaks. Now let us talk about the strategic chessboard in East Asia and why this launch is not only about the Korean Peninsula, the bigger strategic board. There are three overlapping realities happening at the same time. The first reality is that the Korean Peninsula is still technically at war. There was an armistice agreement, not a formal peace treaty. That means every action is interpreted through the lens of an unfinished war. The second reality is that alliances are tightening. The United States keeps about 28,500 troops in South Korea, and the joint drills are a clear reminder of that integrated military presence. The third reality is that missile technology changes the timeline of decision-making. If missiles can be launched quickly, leaders have far less time to verify information, and that increases the risk of miscalculation. Now here is why this launch is especially attention-grabbing. It was not just one missile, it was more than 10. And the number matters. Even when missiles are not aimed at land, a large number of launches can signal production capacity, confidence in stockpiles, or a particular tactical doctrine. Now I want to be careful here. We still do not have confirmed details in the Reuters report about the exact missile models or their ranges, but we can still explain why more than 10 launches is very different from just one. In military planning, a single launch tests something, multiple launches demonstrate something, and a barrage can suggest tactics designed to saturate or complicate defensive systems. Again, that does not mean this is exactly what North Korea did today. It explains why military planners pay close attention when launch numbers increase. Now let us look at how the United States and South Korea may handle that signal, what the allies will do next. There are several predictable steps after a launch like this. First, confirm the facts. How many launches occurred, what the trajectories were, what altitudes were reached, and where the splashdown zones are located. Second, share intelligence across allies. South Korea and Japan both operate advanced sensors, and the United States has additional regional assets. All of this information is combined to create a shared intelligence picture. Third, calibrate messaging. Public statements are never only about information. They are also part of deterrence communication. If officials react too strongly in public, they amplify the effect of the launch. If they react too weakly, they risk appearing passive. The middle path is usually confirmation, condemnation, consultation, and continued readiness. Fourth, decide whether to respond with a visible military action. Usually this is not direct retaliation, but rather readiness demonstrations such as exercises or deployments. Now I want to pause and ask you something. If you were the United States and South Korea, what would be the best response to avoid escalation? Option 1. Respond with a show of military force. Option 2. Respond with diplomatic outreach. Option 3. Respond with sanctions and deeper isolation. Option 4. Do nothing visible and simply continue the drills. Which one do you think is the smartest choice? Comment 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now we come to the part everyone cares about: what happens next and what the possible danger scenarios look like. What could happen next? There are several possible scenarios. Scenario 1 is that North Korea stops here. This launch becomes a one-day signal and the situation gradually cools down. In this case, you might see statements, condemnations, and the continuation of drills without any immediate follow-up launches. Scenario 2 is escalation with additional tests. That does not necessarily mean missiles aimed at territory, but it could mean more launches or the testing of a different weapon category. The goal would be to dominate the news cycle and increase the pressure around Allied military exercises. Scenario 3 is an accident that creates a crisis. This is the nightmare scenario. A missile could malfunction. A splashdown might occur closer than expected to a shipping route. A warning system might misinterpret a trajectory. Civilian aviation could be placed at risk. These are the types of incidents that force emergency diplomatic responses. Scenario 4 is that the launch becomes part of a negotiation cycle. This is a cynical but historically common pattern. Pyongyang raises tension first and later offers talks to reduce it, hoping to gain concessions or relief. That does not mean this is happening now, but it explains why the timing matters. Reports mention discussions about reopening dialogue at the same moment the launch takes place. Now let us go deeper into the question of why this is happening now in a way many people do not consider. Missiles are never launched in a political vacuum. They are launched within a political environment. Why now? There are three major pressures. The first pressure is the Freedom Shield military exercises. They are visible, dramatic, and easy for North Korea to portray as a threat. The second pressure is diplomatic discussion. When leaders begin talking about reopening negotiations, North Korea has an incentive to demonstrate that it can still disrupt the environment. The third pressure is the global attention economy. North Korea competes for international attention. In a world where many crises compete every day, a multi-missile launch forces global cameras to turn toward the peninsula. Now I want to shift to something important. What to watch in the next 24 to 72 hours if you want to understand whether the situation is improving or getting worse. Because the key is not what officials say. The key is what they do. 7 things to watch in the next 72 hours. First, do we see a second day of missile launches? If the answer is yes, it suggests escalation. If the answer is no, it could signal a pause. Second, do we receive confirmed details about the missile types and their ranges? That information will show whether today's launches were short-range training or something more significant. Third, do Japan and South Korea raise alert levels or change their defensive posture?